who's going to be talking about his experiences as a photojournalist in Gaza, and I'm sure we'll bring out some today relevance on that as well. We do need to end precisely at 15 after, so any questions, we ask that you hold those to the very end. If we have time before that time, he can entertain them. Otherwise, we'll do that in Channing Hall. Richard?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody. We do have a fairly short time here, so what I'm going to be doing is talking about some work that I did 30 years ago, exactly 30 years ago, really, from January into the spring in Gaza Strip as a photojournalist. And I hope that what you will get from this, it's kind of a meditation on listening. I approached my time there as a time to listen, as a time to look, to observe, and I did not go as a photojournalist interested in photographing conflict. I was looking more as a sociologist, what is normal life like under conditions that for me growing up were abnormal. I do not personally have any heritage background in the region. I'm of English and German descent, and I first came in contact with the camp that I photographed in 1989 when I was a photographer for City magazine in Cairo. And I'll have a little bit more about that in this moment, but I want to say that I'm also not going to be talking about what is happening right now in the Gaza Strip. This is about voices, this is about people, and it is in the past, it's not the present, and for what's going on right now, I would just encourage everybody to pay attention to a wide variety of news sources, pay attention especially also to independent journalists, Palestinian journalists who are reporting from the Gaza Strip. And I'm not going to go much further into that except to really encourage you to do it, because we are at a very crucial time for all the people who live in the region. I also want to say that I approach this talk and I approach the research as a Unitarian Universalist, and that includes the full respect and dignity for all people. This includes the diversity of Palestinian society, it includes the diversity of Israeli society, it includes respect for the diversity of points of view in history. So I just want to get that clear on the table. The UUA has a statement of the UUA's position on Israel and Palestine that was put out on October 17th. It is online. It also has a really good video about having conversations and learning about this situation. Again, that's online, and I could pass that on to Steve or the church. It might be something that's useful for a further discussion. Let me say, okay, how I ended up there as a guy who grew up in Chicago. I was in grad school at the University of Missouri, and I got this internship in Cairo. And at that time, it was 1989, and Egypt had one Palestinian refugee camp at that time in its territory. It was called Canada Camp, and that was named after peacekeepers who were assigned there in 1956 after the Suez Crisis. It had nothing to do with Canada other than that some Canadian peacekeepers happened to stay there. It was about 5,000 Palestinians who were formerly in the Gaza Strip until the Camp David Accords came along and ran the border right down here past Rafah. And I lived mainly in Khan Yunis and Rafah, and I honestly, I never expected that those places would become common knowledge in the news. Nobody knew about Rafah. And so this camp was on the Egyptian side of the border, and they had just signed an agreement to allow residents of that camp to repatriate gradually over the coming years into the Gaza Strip. And so when I was in Cairo, that accord was signed, and I got the chance to visit the camp, and two things grabbed my attention as a journalist and as someone who thought there might be a story to tell here. One was the emotional impact of watching people in the camp calling to their relatives and friends across the border. At the time, the border was just a cinder block wall about this high and a bunch of barbed wire and maybe 25, 50 feet, something like that in between. So people could stand there and you could see each other. You'll see a picture of that later. This is emotionally very heart-wrenching. The other thing was the question, why? Here I am, this American guy looking at the situation. Why would anybody want to move back into the Gaza Strip? I mean, when I was there, I could hear things popping off, tear gas. I mean, literally right there near the border. And I was like, why would anybody want to move there? You're safer here, right? So this was a journey of understanding people's attachment to land and family, and also the extent to which Egypt made things very difficult for people. One really important kind of geographical fact to understand, and this does bear on today, is that that Rafah, this border here, lies at pretty much a bioregional division. North of it, up through the Gaza Strip and into Israel, the coast is pretty. It has rainfall in the winter. Stuff grows there. But south of that, into Egypt, you're immediately in the Sinai Desert. Stuff doesn't grow there. It doesn't get the winter rains that right now are very uncomfortable for people who have been displaced. Are coming here, and they don't hit the northern Sinai as much. I got to the Gaza Strip through, by crossing over the Sinai. It's desert, 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 a few towns. You get to the Rafah border, and then you're in Gaza, and it's noticeably more green. It's pretty amazing. So this story led to a grant proposal to do a longer story about this camp and about the experience of repatriation. What was that like? What was it going to be like? I initially called it Coming Home to Occupation. And it didn't work out because the Egyptian intelligence people made things hard on the Egyptian side. And on the Gaza side, it was actually easier to report. But I worked with a Palestinian sociologist that I met, Dr. Mohammed Al-Aidi, a community organizer, social worker with UNRWA. And while we were doing our field work in 1993, he was officially employed as a refugee affairs officer, which meant that whenever there was a conflict between soldiers and the Israeli military and local people, he would go and try to mediate and de-escalate. So he was getting in the middle of these conflicts like every day. Incredible person, great sense of humor. So he and I worked together on what became a research project from the Gaza side that had two parts to it. One was me telling my story of trying to do a story, because just all the experiences of trying to do the story, the curfews, the road closures, the bureaucratic difficulties that Mohammed would encounter, just all the difficulties of daily life in the Gaza Strip got in the way of being able to be a journalist. And so that was one side. The other side was talking to people and trying to open some space for people to talk about the pictures that I was taking. And remember, this is pre-mobile phones, pre-social media. We have people speaking for themselves from all over the world now. It's an amazing revolution, but this was not happening in the early 90s. And representations, I wrote my master's thesis about Palestinian representation in media. And like much foreign news, conflict, poverty, not much about the fullness of life that people work very, very hard to achieve, just like people do anywhere under any conditions. I'm just going to read this for a moment because this is from a paper that we wrote. We wanted to see to what extent could the power of representation be shared under political and cultural conditions that systematically and at times comprehensively deny voice. We worked in the spirit of 3 writers, the most important of whom may be familiar to some of you is Edward Said, who said that non-hegemonic representation, this was an academic paper, demands that those doing the representation, the ones taking the pictures, and photojournalists, what do we take pictures of? We take pictures of subjects. Think about that word, subjects. Subject to what? So there's this power relationship, especially because I'm this American, I'm this white guy, and I'm coming into Gaza Strip, power. We're really conscious of this power relationship. Non-hegemonic representation demands that representatives stand answerable to and in uncoercive contact with a host culture. Representation must keep self-awareness of its status as interpretive rather than objective. None of this pictures speak 1,000 words. Oh, we can go into media theory later. But words give meaning to pictures, whether they're words in our heads that are based on our assumptions and our beliefs and our previous knowledge, or they are words that accompany the picture. We wanted the people in the community to talk about the pictures. We wanted to know, what do you see in this picture? What does this picture mean to you? And so there's a lot of this was Mohammed's idea. He was a sociologist, I was a journalist. And this is Mohammed. This was us in 1993. The print has this scratch on it there. I do not know if he is alive. I've not heard from him. He lives in Khan Yunis. He lives near the center of the city. It has been extensively bombed. He is helpful, resourceful, and I pray that he is out there doing his damnedest to help people and that his family is okay. So let's get to some pictures. Where are we at on time?
You have 15 minutes.
Yes. Okay. Okay, so what we did for this, we wanted, as a photojournalist, you take pictures, you talk to people, you get information about them, and then you turn them into your whoever you're working for, media agency, photo agency, and you caption them. And those captions tell people what is in the picture and what is important about it and what it means. And we wanted to interview people in the community, the Canada Camp community, the people who had moved back into the Gaza Strip. I'm hoping I'm connecting these dots for you. So our research was in Rafah, and we worked with 10 people who were willing to talk to the foreign journalist, who might be a spy, you don't know, but they trusted Mohammed. They trusted his judgment, and they were willing to talk to me, and we were clear saying, this is going to be in an article, this is going to be made public, so, know that. What they did was, we assembled a collection of 100 pictures that I had taken of various aspects of daily life, and Mohammed had guided me on this. And we sat down with each person and had them sort the pictures and choose what are the 10 pictures that you think are the most important. And this takes me and a photo editor out of that process of creating an answer to the question of what does this mean for daily life. It puts that in the hands of the community. And we kept track of what each person chose. And we had them choose 10 pictures and then put them in sequence, put them in order. What's the most important picture? You know, and the journalistic question is, what would you lead with? What's the big picture at the start? And what are the supporting images? And we kept track of this statistically. And what follows is the community's photo edit. There were some surprises, and there were some things that were very aligned with what I would have chosen or what another journalist would have chosen, because the process of journalism, when it is practiced honestly and with humility, is not a terrible process. It's just that it is unbalanced in its power relationship. And you know, there are people with power who exercise it wisely. Some journalists do too. Many do. Publishers? Not so sure. So they assembled the pictures, and we asked each person, what does each image, what do you see in this picture? And why is it important? What is important in this picture for people outside of this community to know? And this is what we came up with. Wait, am I going back or forward? There's always a technical difficulty. Okay, these, and just parentheses. The pictures that I've got up on the stage here are, some of them are the people that we talked to, but they're also just portraits of people in the camp that I made during my time there. And I put them there just so that their faces can be with us as you hear what they have to say, which is sometimes very ordinary, and sometimes it's insightful. This was the top picture that they chose. And I know it's very much like some pictures that we're seeing today, but this is actually in Canada Camp. And you know, and I took this in 1993. And one of the people we spoke to, I'm not using their real names. In fact, I don't. She's 42 years old, a teacher. This picture was taken in Canada Camp, Egypt. It shows the mosque of Canada Camp and the destroyed houses, which were destroyed by people in the camp to prevent Egyptians from moving in when we left. I know the man in the background. He used to be good. You see him there? He has a psychological depression, and he's become crazy. He was a contractor and very strong. He married 2 wives, and 1 left him. When we were in Canada Camp, Egypt, we were living under asbestos sheets, but we were happier than we are now. Ayman, 24 years old. This picture shows where I lived for 13 or maybe 15 years, and suddenly I see for the first time that that place has been demolished. You know, there's a poem that says that your longing for home is always strongest for your first home, everywhere you go. I miss that mosque so much, and near to it is the playground. Many times I played in it. I miss those times. This photo was not a surprise for its importance. Adil. This picture is about the border that was fixed in 1982 that separated Rafah into 2 parts. This began the suffering of our people. The people he's referring to as community in the camp. Ayman. Even the Egyptians find that moments like this are still too big a gift to give to Palestinians, so they've built that wall. Only your head can be shown. I talked to my friends there, you see, and we remember the days we spent together before I came here. I hate going there. I feel sick there. Rula, 19. All the people who see this leave weeping. You can't feel any freedom talking there, as you sense that you are watched all the time. While I go to see my friends, I feel like I'm with them for a while, but after that, it's so bad a feeling. I feel that they are really far away after that. Number 3, third most chosen photo, the one that they thought was most important. This is a passport for people who haven't a home. In any airport in the world, when the passport officer sees this, he'll say, "Okay, sit down over here." It carries no respect. How are we doing? Fourth picture. This was on the streets of Rafah, and these guys are they're either affiliated with Hamas or one of the other, perhaps Islamic Jihad. I felt no danger from them. Those groups were small. They didn't really bear much resemblance to what they are today. So I wasn't even nervous taking this picture. Hashim, now we've come to our mujahideen, our strugglers. This is a look at our masked men. They are sacrificing of themselves and their souls, even though they are in danger every minute. Despite their understanding of this danger, they sacrifice. Some of this might be hard to hear now, but this was what people were saying. Most of these men are civilized, educated men, and most of them are university graduates. They are our hope. We have a poem by one of our famous poets, Abdurrahim Mahmoud. It's about the martyrs. I'll hold my soul in my palm and hurl it into hell to get one of two things, either a good life to please my friends or a death to displease my enemies. These people seek only to live as well as other people and to take their place on the land and under the sun. It's a very human behavior that if you can't resolve a problem with those who take away your rights, you'll try to force them by your own hand. Muna, 12 years old. I'm not afraid of the masked men. I stand when they're coming and to watch them. If the soldiers come and the masked men see them, I'll run away. But if the masked people don't see the soldiers, I'll yell to warn them before I run. If the soldiers want to catch them, I'll throw stones with the other kids to let them get away. These kids are waiting around in the picture, watching for soldiers. Ahmed. We put all our life into building our houses, and they take 2 minutes to destroy them. These houses cost a lot of money, and the people can't save to reconstruct it. If I see any family's house demolished, and I see the people on the street, I feel as if it is my home that they've destroyed. I look at the child in the picture. Seems very sad. In his eyes, he wants to kill the soldiers. He feels hate. I feel the suffering here, like we are victims without reason. If you hear about it only, you cannot feel it as you do when you actually see it. I wonder how the person who owns this house feels. He sees all his life black. Everything beside him is black. I feel a challenge in the insistence in the eyes of the children to continue the resistance. So the early pictures spoke a lot about the political conflict. Much of the responses had to do with a sense of deprivation, a sense of a concern with what is missing. But some of the other pictures took a wider view. This is on the Egyptian side in the refugee camp. And Adil says, when the border came, we didn't have a market, so they opened it in the middle of the school street. There was harassment from the Egyptian government against our merchants. If anybody was selling anything at more than the standard price, the one set by the Egyptian government, they would put him in jail in special cells, beat him, and make him pay 300 pounds. The seventh picture, this is This is in a photo studio in Khan Yunis. This is Jerusalem, the capital of Palestine. All the eyes of the children are looking forward to the day they liberate it. Every house in Gaza Strip has this kind of picture because Jerusalem is so precious to us. This picture I took from a window of the apartment that I stayed at when I was in Gaza City. It was right next to this occupation prison. Rula, this speaks about the prisons under occupation. I wish I could live near it and visit every week to see my uncle, who is like a brother to me, who is here. You see the soldiers surrounding them. All the time when I go there, I ask him to come out with me, but of course he can't. At visiting time, the prisoners are so anxious to see their families. It's a hard time. In this small room, and she points to the white block building, you couldn't imagine. There are 20 prisoners with their families, 4 visitors each. This is the picture that I want to end the picture part with. There's a few more in the book that we wrote. Hashem, the kids outside of our country, they're no better than our kids. We have intelligent and good kids. They try to survive despite the situation. Most kids here have a bad situation. Their father is killed, injured, sick, or jobless. But they keep trying to find their way despite the difficulties they face. Kids from anywhere else in the world, if they come to live under these bad conditions, I am sure they couldn't manage so well. Ours are so intelligent and smart in their education, even though there isn't much electricity or water. It's the life in our camps. This picture here is self-explanatory. You feel the presence of many principles of land and family. She is holding her brother in one hand and the beans in another. You can see in her eyes the hope of the alleviation of her poverty, because she's smiling. Despite the poverty, the bitterness, the wounded hearts, there is one day I'm positive they are going to take their rights to live as human beings, just like people in other countries. Despite all, we must stand with our heads high. We also asked, what did we miss? And there's some things about that in the book, but I've just been told that I have 20 seconds. So I hope that this is just the smallest glimpse, the smallest contextualization, just some words that some of which are hopeful and some of which are hard to hear. But this is the space that we live in, and this is all here to help us to hold space, to open space for the fullness of the lives that are struggling to be heard and whose voices are looking to take their place of equality in the world with all the other voices that as Unitarians and as human beings we give full and complete respect to. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Dick. Look forward to future arts forums. Again, third Sunday of every month. If you have other questions and want to talk further with Dick, he'll be in Channing Hall, right, for a few minutes?
Shortly, but I have a coming of age thing to go to upstairs. So I'm also, I'm on Instagram, email, talk to me at church anytime. This is an open dialogue.